This video is for educational purposes only. It may contain errors or missing details due to AI limitations. We encourage viewers to read the original book for complete accuracy.
Chapter 1. A Conversation About Rain. 19 years before she decided to die, Nora Seed sat in the warmth of the small library at Hazeldean School in the town of Bedford. She sat at a low table staring at a chessboard. "Nora, dear, it's natural to worry about your future," said the librarian, Mrs. Elm, her eyes twinkling. Mrs. Elm made her first move, a knight hopping over the neat row of white pawns. "Of course, you're going to be worried about the exams, but you could be anything you want to be, Nora. Think of all that possibility. It's exciting." "Yes, I suppose it is. A whole life in front of you. A whole life. You could do anything, live anywhere, somewhere a bit less cold and wet." She pushed a pawn forward 2 spaces. It was hard not to compare Mrs. Elm to her mother, who treated Nora like a mistake in need of correction. For instance, when she was a baby, her mother had been so worried Nora's left ear stuck out more than her right that she used sticky tape to address the situation, then disguised it beneath a woolen bonnet. "I hate the cold and wet," added Mrs. Elm, for emphasis. Mrs. Elm had short gray hair and a kind and mildly crinkled oval face sitting pale above her turtleneck polo neck. She was quite old, but she was also the person most on Nora's wavelength in the entire school, and even on days when it wasn't raining, she would spend her afternoon break in the small library. "I hate the cold and wet," added Mrs. Elm for emphasis. Mrs. Elm had short gray hair and a kind and mildly crinkled oval face sitting pale above her turtleneck polo neck. She was quite old, but she was also the person most on Nora's wavelength in the entire school, and even on days when it wasn't raining, she would spend her afternoon break in the small library. "Coldness and wetness don't always go together," Nora told her. "Antarctica is the driest continent on Earth. Technically, it's a desert." "Well, that sounds up your street." "I don't think it's far enough away." "Well, maybe you should be an astronaut. Travel the galaxy." Nora smiled. "The rain is even worse on other planets." "Worse than Bedfordshire?" "In Venus, it is pure acid." Mrs. Elm pulled a paper tissue from her sleeve and delicately blew her nose. "See? With a brain like yours, you can do anything." A blond boy Nora recognized from a couple of years below her ran past outside the rain-speckled window, either chasing someone or being chased. Since her brother had left, she'd felt a bit unguarded out there. The library was a little shelter of civilization. "Dad thinks I've thrown everything away. Now I've stopped swimming." "Well, far be it from me to say, but there is more to this world than swimming really fast. There are many different possible lives ahead of you. Like I said last week, you could be a glaciologist. I've been researching in the..." And that is when the phone rang. "1 minute," said Mrs. Elm softly. "I'd better get that." A moment later, Nora watched Mrs. Elm on the phone. "Yes, she's here now." The librarian's face fell in shock. She turned away from Nora, but her words were audible across the hushed room. "Oh, no. No, oh my God, of course." 19 years later. Chapter 2. The Man at the Door. 27 hours before she decided to die, Nora Seed sat on her dilapidated sofa scrolling through other people's happy lives, waiting for something to happen. And then, out of nowhere, something actually did. Someone, for whatever peculiar reason, rang her doorbell. She wondered for a moment if she shouldn't get the door at all. She was, after all, already in her night clothes, even though it was only 9 p.m. She felt self-conscious about her oversized Eco-Warrior t-shirt and her tartan pajama bottoms. She put on her slippers to be slightly more civilized and discovered that the person at the door was a man and one she recognized. He was tall and gangly and boyish, with a kind face, but his eyes were sharp and bright, like they could see through things. It was good to see him, if a little surprising, especially as he was wearing sports gear and he looked hot and sweaty despite the cold and rainy weather. The juxtaposition between them made her feel even more slovenly than she had done 5 seconds earlier. But she'd been feeling lonely, and though she'd studied enough existential philosophy to believe loneliness was a fundamental part of being a human in an essentially meaningless universe, it was good to see him. "Ash," she said, smiling. "It's Ash, isn't it?" "Yes, it is." "What are you doing here? It's good to see you." A few weeks ago, she'd been sat playing her electric piano, and he'd run down Bancroft Avenue and seen her in the window here at 33A and given her a little wave. He had once, years ago, asked her out for a coffee. Maybe he was about to do that again. "It's good to see you too," he said, but his tense forehead didn't show it. When she'd spoken to him in the shop, he'd always sounded breezy, but now his voice contained something heavy. He scratched his brow, made another sound, but didn't quite manage a full word. "You running?" A pointless question. He was clearly out for a run, but he seemed relieved, momentarily, to have something trivial to say. "Yeah, I'm doing the Bedford half. It's this Sunday." "Oh, right. Great. I was thinking of doing a half marathon, and then I remembered I hate running." This had sounded funnier in her head than it did as actual words being vocalized out of her mouth. She didn't even hate running. But still, she was perturbed to see the seriousness of his expression. The silence went beyond awkward into something else. "You told me you had a cat." "Yes, I have a cat." I remembered his name, Voltaire. "A ginger tabby?" "Yeah, I call him Volts. He finds Voltaire a bit pretentious. It turns out he's not massively into 18th century French literature and philosophy. He's quite down to earth, for a cat." Ash looked down at her slippers. "I'm afraid I think he's dead." "What?" "He's lying very still by the side of the road. I saw the name on the collar. I think a car might have hit him. I'm sorry, Nora." She was so scared of her sudden switch in emotions right then that she kept smiling, as if the smile could keep her in the world she had just been in, the one where Volts was alive and where this man she'd sold guitar songbooks to had rung her doorbell for another reason. Ash, she remembered, was a surgeon, not a veterinary one, a general human one. If he said something was dead, it was in all probability dead. "I'm so sorry." Nora had a familiar sense of grief. Only the sertraline stopped her crying. Oh, God. She stepped out onto the wet, cracked paving slabs of Bancroft Avenue, hardly breathing, and saw the poor, ginger-furred creature lying on the rain-glossed tarmac beside the curb. His head grazed the side of the pavement, and his legs were back as if in mid-gallop, chasing some imaginary bird. Oh, Volts. Oh, no. Oh, God. She knew she should be experiencing pity and despair for her feline friend, and she was, but she had to acknowledge something else. As she stared at Voltaire's still and peaceful expression, that total absence of pain, there was an inescapable feeling brewing in the darkness. Envy.
Chapter 3. String Theory. 9.5 hours before she decided to die, Nora arrived late for her afternoon shift at String Theory. "I'm sorry," she told Neil in the scruffy little windowless box of an office. "My cat died last night, and I had to bury him. Well, someone helped me bury him, but then I was left alone in my flat and couldn't sleep and forgot to set the alarm and didn't wake up till midday and then had to rush." This was all true, and she imagined her appearance, including makeup-free face, loose makeshift ponytail, and the same second-hand green corduroy pinafore dress she had worn to work all week, garnished with the general air of tired despair, would back her up. Neil looked up from his computer and leaned back in his chair. He joined his hands together and made a steeple of his index fingers, which he placed under his chin as if he was Confucius, contemplating a deep philosophical truth about the universe, rather than the boss of a musical equipment shop dealing with a late employee. There was a massive Fleetwood Mac poster on the wall behind him, the top right corner of which had come unstuck and flopped down like a puppy's ear. "Listen, Nora, I like you." Neil was harmless, a 50-something guitar aficionado who liked cracking bad jokes and playing passable old Dylan covers live in the store. "And I know you've got mental health stuff. Everyone's got mental health stuff. You know what I mean. I'm feeling much better generally," I lied. "It's not clinical. The doctor says it's situational depression. It's just that I keep on having new situations. But I haven't taken a day off sick for it all, apart from when my mom... Yeah, apart from that." Neil sighed. When he did so, he made a whistling sound out of his nose, an ominous B-flat. "Nora, how long have you worked here?" 12 years and, she knew this too well, and 11 months and 3 days, on and off. "That's a long time. I feel like you are made for better things. You're in your late 30s. I'm 35. You've got so much going for you. You teach people piano, one person." He brushed a crumb off his sweater. "Did you picture yourself stuck in your hometown working in a shop, when you were 14? What did you picture yourself as?" At 14? A swimmer. She was the fastest 14-year-old girl in the country at breaststroke and second fastest at freestyle. She remembered standing on a podium at the National Swimming Championships. "So, what happened?" She gave the short version. "It was a lot of pressure." "Pressure makes us, though. You start off as coal, and the pressure makes you a diamond." She didn't correct his knowledge of diamonds. She didn't tell him that while coal and diamonds are both carbon, coal is too impure to be able, under whatever pressure, to become a diamond. According to science, you start off as coal and you end up as coal. Maybe that was the real life lesson. She smoothed a stray strand of her coal-black hair up to her ponytail. "What are you saying, Neil?" "It's never too late to pursue a dream. Pretty sure it's too late to pursue that one. You're a very well-qualified person, Nora. Degree in philosophy? Not a massive demand for philosophers in Bedford, if I'm honest, Neil. You went to uni, had a year in London, then came back." I didn't have much of a choice. Nora didn't want a conversation about her dead mom, or even Dan, because Neil had found Nora's backing out of a wedding with 2 days' notice the most fascinating love story since Kurt and Courtney. "You have choices, Nora. There's such a thing as free will." "Well, not if you subscribe to a deterministic view of the universe." "But why here?" "I was either here or the Animal Rescue Center. This paid better, plus, music." "You were in a band with your brother." "I was. The Labyrinths. We weren't really going anywhere." "Your brother tells a different story." This took Nora by surprise. "Joe? How do you—" "He bought an amp, Marshall DSL 40. "When?" "Friday." "He was in Bedford?" "Unless it was a hologram like Tupac." "He was probably visiting Ravi. Ravi is your brother's best friend. While Joe had given up the guitar and moved to London for a crap IT job he hated, Ravi had stuck to Bedford. He plays in a covers band now called Slaughterhouse 4, doing pub gigs around town." "Right, that's interesting." Nora was pretty sure her brother knew Friday was her day off. The fact prodded her from inside. "I'm happy here. Except you aren't." He was right. A soul sickness festered in her. Her mind was throwing itself. I widened my smile. "I mean, I am happy with the job. Happy as in, satisfied. Neil, I need this job." "You are a good person. You worry about the world, the homeless, the environment. I need a job." He was back in his Confucius pose. "You need freedom." "I don't want freedom." "This is not a non-profit organization, though I have to say it is rapidly becoming one." "Look, Neil, is this about what I said the other week about you needing to modernize things? I've got some ideas of how to get younger people—" "No. This place used to be just guitars. String theory, get it? I diversified, made this work. It's just that when times are tough, I can't pay you to put off customers with your face looking like a wet weekend." "What?" I'm afraid, Nora, I'm going to have to let you go.
Chapter 4. To live is to suffer. 9 hours before she decided to die, Nora wandered around Bedford aimlessly. The town was a conveyor belt of despair. The Pebble Dash Sports Center, where her dead dad once watched her swim lengths of the pool, the Mexican restaurant where she'd taken Dan for fajitas, the hospital where her mom had her treatment. Dan had texted her yesterday. Nora, I miss your voice. Can we talk? D. X. She'd said she was stupidly hectic. Big lol. Yet it was impossible to text anything else. Not because she didn't still feel for him, but because she did, and couldn't risk hurting him again. She'd ruined his life. My life is chaos, he'd told her, via drunk texts, shortly after the would-be wedding she'd pulled out of 2 days before. The universe tended towards chaos and entropy. That was basic thermodynamics. Maybe it was basic existence, too. You lose your job, then more shit happens. The wind whispered through the trees. It began to rain. She headed towards the shelter of a newsagent's with the deep and, as it happened, correct sense that things were about to get worse. Chapter 5. Doors. 8 hours before she decided to die, Nora entered the newsagent's. Sheltering from the rain? The woman behind the counter asked. Yes. Nora kept her head down, her despair growing like a weight she couldn't carry. A National Geographic was on display. As she stared now at the magazine cover, an image of a black hole, she realized that's what she was, a black hole, a dying star, collapsing in on itself. Her dad used to subscribe. She remembered being enthralled by an article about Svalbard, the Norwegian archipelago in the Arctic Ocean. She'd never seen a place that looked so far away. She'd read about scientists doing research among glaciers and frozen fjords and puffins. Then, prompted by Mrs. Elm, she'd decided she wanted to be a glaciologist. She saw the scruffy, hunched form of her brother's friend and their own former bandmate, Ravi, by the music mags, engrossed in an article. She stood there for a fraction too long because when she walked away, she heard him say, Nora? Ravi, hi. I hear Joe was in Bedford the other day. A small nod. Yeah. Did you see him? I did, actually. A silence Nora felt as pain. I didn't tell me he was coming. Was just a flyby. Is he okay? Ravi paused. Nora had once liked him, and he'd been a loyal friend to her brother. But, as with Joe, there was a barrier between them. They hadn't parted on the best of terms. He'd thrown his drumsticks on the floor of a rehearsal room and stropped out when Nora told him she was out of the band. I think he's depressed. Nora's mind grew heavier at the idea her brother might feel like she did. He's not himself, Ravi went on, anger in his voice. He's going to have to move out of his shoebox in Shepherd's Bush, what with him not being able to play lead guitar in a successful rock band. Mind you, I've got no money either. Pub gigs don't pay these days, even when you agreed to clean the toilets. Ever cleaned pub toilets, Nora? I'm having a pretty shit time too, if we're doing the Misery Olympics. Ravi cough-laughed. A hardness momentarily shadowed his face. The world's smallest violin is playing. She wasn't in the mood. Is this about the labyrinths, still? It meant a lot to me, and to your brother, to all of us. We had a deal with Universal, right? There. Album, singles, tour, promo. We could be Coldplay now. You hate Coldplay. Not the point. We could be in Malibu. Instead, Bedford. And so no, your brother's not ready to see you. I was having panic attacks. I'd have let everyone down in the end. I told the label to take you on without me. I agreed to write the songs. It wasn't my fault I was engaged. I was with Dan. It was kind of a deal breaker. Well, yeah. How did that work out? Ravi, that isn't fair. Fair. Great word. The woman behind the counter gawped with interest. Bands don't last. We'd have been a meteor shower. Over before we started. Meteor showers are fucking beautiful. Come on, you're still with Ella, aren't you? And I could be with Ella and in a successful band, with money.
We had that chance, right? There. Palm of my hand. Our songs were fire. I hated myself for silently correcting the our to my. I don't think your problem was stage fright or wedding fright. I think your problem was life fright. This hurt. The words took the air out of her. And I think your problem, she retaliated, voice trembling, is blaming others for your shitty life. He nodded, as if slapped, put his magazine back. See you around, Nora. Tell Joe I said hi, she said as he walked out of the shop and into the rain. Please. She caught sight of the cover of Your Cat magazine, a gingered tabby. Her mind felt loud, like a Sturm and Drang symphony, as if the ghost of a German composer was trapped inside her mind, conjuring chaos and intensity. The woman behind the counter said something to her she missed. Sorry? Nora Seed? The woman, blonde bob, bottle tan, was happy and casual and relaxed in a way Nora no longer knew how to be, leaning over the counter, on her forearms, as if Nora was a lemur at the zoo. Yep. I'm Carrie Ann. Remember you from school? The swimmer. Superbrain? Didn't watch his face, Mr. Blandford, do an assembly on you once, said you were going to end up at the Olympics? Nora nodded. So did you? I, gave it up. Was more into music. At the time. Then life happened. So what do you do now? I'm, between things. Got anyone then? Bloke? Kids? Nora shook her head, wishing it would fall off her own head, onto the floor so she never had to have a conversation with a stranger ever again. Well, don't hang about. Tick-tock, tick-tock. I'm 35, and I'm not sure I want. Me and Jake were like rabbits, but we got there. 2 little terrors, but worth it, you know? I just feel complete. I could show you some pictures. I have had it with, phones. Dan had wanted kids. Nora didn't know. She'd been petrified of motherhood, the fear of a deeper depression. She couldn't look after herself, let alone anyone else. So still in Bedford? Mm-hmm. Thought you'd be one who got away. I came back. My mom was ill. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Hope she's okay now? I better go. But it's still raining. As Nora escaped the shop, she wished there were nothing but doors ahead of her, which she could walk through one by one, leaving everything behind.
Chapter 6. How to Be a Black Hole. 7 hours before she decided to die, Nora was in freefall and she had no one to talk to. Her last hope was her former best friend, Izzy, who was over 10,000 miles away in Australia, and things had dried up between them too. She took out her phone and sent Izzy a message. Hi, Izzy. Long time no chat. Miss you, friend. Would be wondrous to catch up. X. She added another X and sent it. Within a minute, Izzy had seen the message. Nora waited in vain for 3 dots to appear. She passed the cinema, where a new Ryan Bailey film was playing tonight, a corny cowboy rom-com called Last Chance Saloon. Ryan Bailey's face seemed to always know deep and significant things. Nora had loved him ever since she'd watched him play a brooding Plato on The Athenians, on TV, and since he'd said that in an interview that he'd studied philosophy. She'd imagined them having deep conversations about Henry David Thoreau through a veil of steam in his West Hollywood hot tub. Go confidently in the direction of your dreams, Thoreau had said. Live the life you've imagined. Thoreau had been her favorite philosopher to study. But who seriously goes confidently in the direction of their dreams? Well, apart from Thoreau. He'd gone and lived in the woods, with no contact from the outside world, to just sit there and write and chop wood and fish. But life was probably simpler 2 centuries ago in Concord, Massachusetts, than modern life in Bedford, Bedfordshire. Or maybe it wasn't. Maybe she was just really crap at it. At life. Whole hours passed by. She wanted to have a purpose, something to give her a reason to exist. But she had nothing. Not even the small purpose of picking up Mr. Banerjee's medication, as she had done that 2 days ago.
She tried to give a homeless man some money, but realized she had no money. "Cheer up, love. It might never happen," someone said. Nothing ever did, she thought to herself. That was the whole problem.
Chapter 7. Antimatter. 5 hours before she decided to die, as she began walking home, her phone vibrated in her hand. Maybe it was Izzy. Maybe Ravi had told her brother to get in touch. No. "Oh, hi, Doreen." An agitated voice. "Where were you?" She'd totally forgotten. "What time is it? I've had a really crap day. I'm so sorry. We waited outside your flat for an hour." "I can still do Leo's lesson when I get back. I'll be 5 minutes." "Too late. He's with his dad now for 3 days." "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." She was a waterfall of apologies. She was drowning in herself. "To be honest, Nora, he's been thinking about giving up altogether." "But he's so good. He's really enjoyed it. But he's too busy. Exams, mates, football. Something has to give." "He has a real talent. I've got him into bloody Chopin. Please." A deep, deep sigh. "Bye, Nora." Nora imagined the ground opening up, sending her down through the lithosphere and the mantle, not stopping until she reached the inner core, compressed into a hard, unfeeling metal. 4 hours before she decided to die, Nora passed her elderly neighbor, Mr. Banerjee. Mr. Banerjee was 84 years old. He was frail, but was slightly more mobile since his hip surgery. "It's terrible out, isn't it?" "Yes," mumbled Nora. He glanced at his flower bed. "The irises are out, though." She looked at the clusters of purple flowers, forcing a smile as she wondered what possible consolation they could offer. His eyes were tired behind their spectacles. He was at his door, fumbling for keys, a bottle of milk in a carrier bag that seemed too heavy for him. It was rare to see him out of the house, a house she had visited during her first month here, to help him set up an online grocery shop. "Oh," he said now, "I have some good news. I don't need you to collect my pills anymore. The boy from the chemist has moved nearby, and he says he will drop them off." Nora tried to reply, but couldn't get the words out. She nodded instead. He managed to open the door, then closed it, retreating into his shrine to his dear dead wife. That was it. No one needed her. She was superfluous to the universe. Once inside her flat, the silence was louder than noise. The smell of cat food, a bowl still out for Voltaire half-eaten. She got herself some water and swallowed 2 antidepressants and stared at the rest of the pills, wondering. 3 hours before she decided to die, her whole being ached with regret, as if the despair in her mind was somehow in her torso and limbs too, as if it had colonized every part of her. It reminded her that everyone was better off without her. You get near a black hole and the gravitational pull drags you into its bleak, dark reality. That thought was like a ceaseless mind cramp, something too uncomfortable to bear yet too strong to avoid. Nora went through her social media. No messages, no comments, no new followers, no friend requests. She was antimatter with added self-pity. She went on Instagram and saw everyone had worked out how to live, except her. She posted a rambling update on Facebook, which she didn't even really use anymore. 2 hours before she decided to die, she opened a bottle of wine. Old philosophy textbooks looked down at her, ghost furnishings from her university days, when life still had possibility. A yucca plant and 3 tiny squat potted cacti. She imagined being a non-sentient life form sitting in a pot all day was probably an easier existence. She sat down at the little electric piano, but played nothing. She thought of sitting by Leo's side, teaching him Chopin's Prelude in E minor. Happy moments can turn into pain, given time. There was an old musician's cliché about how there were no wrong notes on a piano. But her life was a cacophony of nonsense, a piece that could have gone in wonderful directions, but now went nowhere at all. Time slipped by.
She stared into space. After the wine, a realization hit her with total clarity. She wasn't made for this life. Every move had been a mistake, every decision a disaster, every day a retreat from who she imagined she'd be. Swimmer, musician, philosopher, spouse, traveler, glaciologist, happy, loved. Nothing. She couldn't even manage cat owner, or 1 hour a week piano tutor, or human capable of conversation. The tablets weren't working. She finished the wine. All of it. "I miss you," she said into the air, as if the spirits of every person she'd loved were in the room with her. She called her brother and left a voicemail when he didn't pick up. "I love you, Joe. I just wanted you to know that. There's nothing you could have done. This is about me. Thank you for being my brother. I love you. Bye." It began to rain again, so she sat there with the blinds open, staring at the drops on the glass. The time was now 22 minutes past 11. She knew only one thing with absolute certainty. She didn't want to reach tomorrow. She stood up. She found a pen and a piece of paper. It was, she decided, a very good time to die. Dear whoever, I had all the chances to make something of my life, and I blew them everyone. Through my own carelessness and misfortune, the world has retreated from me, and so now it makes perfect sense that I should retreat from the world. If I felt it was possible to stay, I would. But I don't, and so I can't. I make life worse for people. I have nothing to give. I'm sorry. Be kind to each other. Bye. Nora. Chapter 8. At first the mist was so pervasive that she could see nothing else until, slowly, she saw pillars appear on either side of her. She was standing on a path, some kind of colonnade. The columns were brain gray with specks of brilliant blue. The misty vapors cleared, like spirits wanting to be unwatched, and a shape emerged, a solid, rectangular shape. The shape of a building, about the size of a church or a small supermarket. It had a stone facade the same coloration as the pillars, with a large wooden central door and a roof which had aspirations of grandeur, with intricate details in a grand-looking clock on the front gable, with black painted Roman numerals and its hands pointing to midnight. Tall, dark arched windows framed with stone bricks punctuated the front wall, equidistant from each other. When she first looked, it seemed there were only 4 windows, but a moment later there were definitely 5 of them. She thought she must have miscounted. As there was nothing else around, and since she had nowhere else to be, Nora stepped cautiously towards it. She looked at the digital display of her watch. Midnight, as the clock had told her. She waited for the next second to arrive, but it didn't. Even as she walked closer to the building, even as she opened the wooden door, even as she stepped inside, the display didn't change. Either something was wrong with her watch, or something was wrong with time. In the circumstances, it could have been either. What's happening? She wondered. What the hell is going on? Maybe this place would hold some answers, she thought, as she walked inside. The place was well lit, and the floor was light stone, somewhere between light yellow and camel brown like the color of an old page. But the windows she had seen on the outside weren't there on the inside. In fact, even though she had only taken a few steps forward, she could no longer see the walls at all. Instead, there were bookshelves, aisles and aisles of shelves, reaching up to the ceiling and branching off from the broad, open corridor Nora was walking down. She turned down one aisle and stopped to gaze in bafflement at the seemingly endless amount of books. The books were everywhere, on shelves so thin that they might as well have been invisible. The books were all green, greens of multifarious shades. Some of these volumes were a murky swamp green, some a bright and light chartreuse, others a bold emerald, and others the verdant shade of summer lawns. And on the subject of summer lawns, despite the fact that the books looked old, the air in the library felt fresh. It had a lush, grassy, outdoors kind of smell, not the dusty scent of old tomes. The shelves really did seem to go on forever, straight and long towards a far-off horizon, like lines indicating one-point perspective in a school art project, broken only by the occasional corridor. She picked a corridor at random and set off. At the next turn, she took a left, and became a little lost. She searched for a way out, but there was no sign of an exit. She attempted to retrace her steps towards the entrance, but it was impossible. Eventually, she had to conclude she wasn't going to find the exit. "This is abnormal," she said to herself, to find comfort in the sound of her own voice. "Definitely abnormal." Nora stopped and stepped closer to some of the books. There were no titles or author names adorning the spines. Aside from the difference of shade, the only other variation was size. The books were similar height, but varied in width. Some of their spines were 2 inches wide, others significantly less. 1 or 2 weren't even much more than pamphlets. She reached to pull out one of the books, choosing a medium-sized one in a slightly drab olive color. It looked a bit dusty and worn. Before she had pulled it clean from the shelf, she heard a voice behind her, and she jumped back. "Be careful," the voice said. And Nora turned around to see who was there.